took the pieces of the skirt to my sewing machine and assembled it. So I have the down the front center, this one done, and then the side seam. So now I have an entire piece that I'll have to work with. I want to make a note on the finishing. For the seam finishing, I used, I've seen that in a video. It was presented as the vintage method, but I like it because it makes nice and flat seams. This is a light summer fabric and I didn't want any bulk at the seams. So I do have crimping scissors, and the method is you cut any raw edge with the crimping scissors. This is to prevent the fraying. Now this fabric doesn't fray very much to begin with, but the crimping on its own already, I think, just fully stops the fraying. But we want this to be lasting. So another thing you do is you work a row of stitching pretty close to the edge. So this reinforces and stabilizes the fabric and completely prevents the fraying. So this is better than the overhang stitch or a serger because you don't have all this bulk of thread. It's lighter. And so then I just work my seams and press them flat. Another thing I did is to, along what's going to be at the waistline, I did a basting stitch. So I have an entire row of basting stitching that I did some distance from the top. It doesn't really matter where you put it. You want it low enough because you're going to be pulling on this thread to gather it. And so I did it in pieces because it's tough to do gather on a single thread. You're likely to break your thread. So I did each panel has its own thread that I can pull on and adjust. So the next step will be to gather this to where it fits my waist. Gather the front, match the amount of gathering in the back, make sure it's wrapping the way I want it, that I have enough overlap. And once I have that, it will give me it will give me the measurements that I need in order to create the waistband. So I've done my gathering and I did a fitting to see how this would work. I double checked the measurements for the front. The back is variable. You just want to make sure that it overlaps sufficiently so it doesn't show your underwear when you're walking around with this wrap dress. But the front is 32 centimeters, which is exactly half my waistline, so that would work well. And then, so I'm going to write this down, and then I'm also going to measure just to be sure. I mean, the other measurement you need is from the side seam to the end, so on either side. And once we have those measurements, there's a few more things to measure. To make the waistline, you need your measurement down your center from the waist to right under the chest. And then there's a few more decisions to make that I discussed that in my drafting video for the waistband. I want to design the part of the bodice of the pinafore dress in the front, and essentially the waistband. And what we're talking about is the following. So in the ideal world where this works out, we would have a waistband that's wide in the front, and then on top of that there will be some a cross, some cups, and then the straps. So I am talking about this part here. So it's going to be wide in the front, get narrower as we get to the sides, and then it will continue in the back. And in the back, it needs to follow the wrap skirt, and it ends in just strings too. to tie the whole thing, and the strings will wrap around and come back and tie in the front. That's the idea. So this is what I'm envisioning. I'll try and build this little by little. So there will be, I want to show also, so there's the whole skirt. So the skirt is a wrap skirt type. And so there will be a piece that's going to be the entire width. And we have the front pan. So let me define the center front. And then we have, let's say, the front panels here. So this is the front of the skirt, and those are the sides that go around the back and tie. So the side seams are here. So that's important to note, because we'll have one piece that's going to be like this and have this design in the front that goes wider in the middle, in the front. And then in the back, we want this to diminish still in width until we get to narrower here, and that's to be defined. And to that, we are going to add just thinner straps on the two sides. And then in this part, the front part is where the cups need to attach. So we need to think about that as well, in terms of what attaches to this piece. And so right now we're designing this part. Yeah, just this part. We can add those later. So we need to measure a few things. Now let me focus on just this part of the of that waistband, essentially. So we're gonna draw it, center front, side. So we need two measurements. I'm gonna call it A and B. So A is from your waist to the point right under your chest, below your boobs, kind of like where on cute bras they often put a little bow or a little rose there. That's kind of where you want it. So waist to under chest. And you can go a little higher, like if you have an underwire bra, you can go right up to on top of the wire. You can go a little higher because that's going to go in between in the front. And then the sides, you have to decide that for yourself. For B is thick, make it a thick waistband. To achieve desired effect. So you have to see how wide you want it to be by the time you get to the side. Maybe you want this to be really pointy. Maybe you want it to be more sloped. I'm going to round mine the way I drew it. So that's something that I haven't measured yet, but it's to be decided. And then we also need this measurement. I'm going to call it C. So C is half the waistline. And then we also need another measurement, and that's going to be the same on either side when you continue in the back. Measurement D. D, you kind of have to experiment. What I would do is I would um, gather the front of the skirt to see and gather to where it reaches. So this part you need to gather the skirt to where it wraps around your front, so half your waistline. See how much that gathers, and then gather the back also of the skirt to mimic the similar way of gathering. You don't want to have the front really gathered and the back not gathered at all. So you want to make this pleasing on your skirt, and then measure. But D loosely should be uh, less than half the waist. But again, you'll have to measure and kind of experiment with that. And then one last measurement you need is the height of the sides by the time you get to the end. So you can make that the same as B if you want to, like have a thick waistband that wraps all around, or you can make it smaller. I haven't decided yet. So to decide on what I want to do with that. And that will be that front piece. So eventually we're going to be cutting this all out of one piece. So it will be like that. And same on the other side. So we want to cut this all out in one piece. So on a fresh board, I put half of that piece because you're going to set it down on the fabric fold and get a whole piece out of it. So actually, this is the basic one with the measurements. We will need seam allowance. I'm going to add some seam allowance. So you will want some seam allowance all around, actually. Seam allowance here, seam allowance at the bottom, and seam allowance at the top. Clearly we don't need seam allowance here because this is going to go on the fabric fold. And we need 2 of these for what I want to do. So cut 2 of them. It will be, we want this piece to have structure. And so it'll be cut, it will be a double layer, and also it'll be clean. It allows to have a clean finish if you have two pieces. So we're going to sew them right sides together and then flip it, kind of like when you make a pillow cover, pillowcase, kind of like that. So we'll need to cut 2 of those, and then we also need some interfacing. Actually, I am planning on this, but first I'm going to see what it feels like when I put those 2 layers together. If it's sufficient. I want in the front, I don't want that to crumble. I want to have this piece under my chest. I would like this to have some body to it without being uncomfortable. It's not an armor, but I think some lightweight interfacing would be good. And so the interfacing, you just want to cut this bit, and it should have the exact measurements. So for the interfacing, you don't have any seam allowance. You make it, I'll draw it whole this time. But your facing should have those exact measurements. No seam allowance. So that's what I have in my mind, and we'll see how that goes. So 2 of these with fabric, 1 interfacing, and then we get to assemble it. But we'll also have to, the assembly will be challenging because we also need to include the side, the straps that go. We still need to include those. And then we also need to include the top of the bodice that needs to be attached neatly there.
Oh, what's up, Coco? Oh, you depressed? Are you doing middle to mama? Coco, you need help getting down? What's up? Hmm? My baby.